thank the distinguished gentlelady from the Virgin Islands for yielding and for the phenomenal job that you have done, along with my classmate, the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Representative Mark Vesey. As you noted, I've got great affection for the fact that you have a significant connection to Brooklyn. We say back home there are two types of Americans, those who live in Brooklyn and those who want to live in Brooklyn. But certainly this is a significant issue that the Congressional Black Caucus has gathered here today to discuss during this hour of power, the opportunity for members of the Congressional Black Caucus to speak directly to the American people on an issue of great significance. Since January 20th, we've seen a disturbing increase here in America in anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim, anti-Black, anti-LGBT, and anti-Semitic acts. And the question is this just a coincidence? Or could it possibly have something to do with the election of the 45th President of the United States of America? Now, in part, what we're seeing is connected to a historic backlash that has often occurred throughout this journey that we've been on here in America, that whenever we make significant progress, there's always a backlash amongst some in America who've got a problem with the fact that we've done things designed to be more consistent with our values of liberty and justice for all, equal protection under the law. We know slavery was the original sin here in America. That was corrected in the aftermath of the North's victory during the Civil War. We had the Reconstruction Amendments. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. 15th Amendment, the right to vote regardless of race. That was progress in America, followed by the inevitable backlash. The imposition of Jim Crow laws, a lynching epidemic, black codes, segregation, particularly throughout the Deep South. Progress followed by backlash. And then finally, in the 1960s, an effort to create a more perfect union and address the unfinished business in America, you had the Civil Rights Movement, anchored with the 64 Civil Rights Act, effectively ended Jim Crow, the 65 Voting Rights Act. African Americans in the Deep South, people of color throughout the country, the right to vote, unimpeded from things like grandfather clauses and poll taxes and other types of shenanigans that people were practicing. 1968 Fair Housing Act capped off the civil rights movement, followed by the inevitable backlash. Richard Nixon ran a racist campaign, a Southern strategy designed to appeal to aggrieved whites in parts of this country, particularly in the Deep South, ushered in an era of resistance to the progress that had been made, anti-busing, anti-affirmative action. And then, of course, we've got Barack Obama, who was elected in what many of us viewed as an incredible step in the right direction. African Americans having gone from the outhouse to the White House. 8 years of tremendous progress in moving this country forward, followed by the election of Donald Trump, a man who spent 5 years perpetrating the racist lie that Barack Obama was not born in the United States of America. And many of us are wondering, why were so many people who worship at the altar of white supremacy drawn to Donald Trump's campaign? What was it about this individual that so many folks dripping in hatred flocked to his candidacy? That's not to say that every American who voted for Donald Trump is a racist. We do know that every racist in America voted for Donald Trump. That's a problem. And so again, I just asked the question in closing, is this all a big coincidence? We know part of it is the backlash that has often occurred whenever we've made in America. But this president has a responsibility to address the rise in hate crimes that have taken place on his watch, whether or not his election is directly connected to it. Many of us have our own suspicions, but he's the commander-in-chief. And he's got to tell his attorney general, who is straight out of central casting in terms of the good old boys, he's got to tell his attorney general that your job as chief law enforcement officer in the land is to enforce the laws, whether you like them or not.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. The gentlewoman from the Virgin Islands may continue.
At this time, I would yield additional time to Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. And in closing, I'll simply say that every single thing that has been said, and I would urge you to challenge anything, is a fact. And in fact, there are facts that have been left out in terms of my remarks about the 45th President of the United States. I've actually been kind of gentle as it relates to the person who's occupying 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now, but more to come. But I'd welcome the Speaker to dispute anything that has been said in the name of us trying to move this country forward, consistent with the notions of equal protection under the law and liberty and justice for all. And with that, I yield back to our dynamic anchor, Representative Stacey Plaskett.